Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to eFest Careers 2020 and our session on LinkedIn. We're really excited that you've joined us here in the job hunting track. This is our final session of the day and the one that I'm most excited about. Let me first introduce you to our speakers for this session. First, we have Lori Burris. She's the Education Innovation Advisor at lynda.com, a LinkedIn company. Welcome, Lori. Next, we have
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Lori. Next, we have Jake Hirsch Allen. Jake is the North American Higher Ed and Workforce Development System Lead at LinkedIn. Welcome, Jake.
Thanks so much.
And then we have two incredible mechanical engineering students joining us today. So we're really excited to hear from them and hear about what they've done on LinkedIn. Our first student is Samantha Robbins. Samantha is a senior mechanical engineering student at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, Arizona. Welcome, Samantha.
Hi.
And we have Arya Viviare. She's a final year mechanical engineering student at the Cummins College of Engineering for Women, based in India, in Pune. Arya, it's great to have you here as well. Welcome.
Hello, everybody.
Great. So Lori, let me turn it over to you to get this started.
Well, thank you so much for doing this, and thank you so much for helping us set up this panel so that we could have some real student insight and student real-life experiences. This panel is called Getting Ready, Getting Noticed, Getting Heard, but you might want to call this panel like How to Get Ready for Life in the Real World. We're lucky today to have these two graduating seniors, and we're going to walk through their experiences of setting up their LinkedIn profiles, and then Jake and I are going to give sort of our input, advice, and sort of suggestions as we go along. It'll be in 3 parts. And once the getting ready, getting noticed, getting connected. So I want to address right off the bat, the ongoing COVID-19 has cast uncertainty over many students. And this session is all about dispelling those feelings. Forget the what ifs, the bad scenarios, because a lot of to-dos or actionable steps exist that you can control and do right now. If you're a student in college, it's time to get ready and get noticed and get heard. Most students have a high amount of uncertainty and low confidence from the data that we're getting at LinkedIn whenever you mention COVID. They do not know what skills they need to learn to get started in a career. And although 80% of the students have a LinkedIn account, 20% do not. And that's a lot when you think they're all getting ready to go out into the workforce. 10% of the next generation of workers feel wholly unprepared for the workplace after their degree. But it requires that you take these actionable steps. Be open to job opportunities you hadn't envisioned for yourself. Be open to living somewhere you hadn't planned to. Network hard, even if no one is going to offer you a job right now. Consider volunteering. And when you do get a job and the labor market is a little bit better or in better shape, consider scouting out other better opportunities to make up for any lost time. Which of these skills do you have? Because these are all the skills that employers think are necessary to transition from school to work. Fewer than half of the students, and this was a big survey done, over 3,000 students were interviewed, felt that they had not gained the critical skills in college needed to transition to the workforce. But they did think they had certain things like complex problem solving. So you really need to bump up on resume writing, workplace technologies, and interview skills. So it's time to get ready to make that transition from school to work, no matter whether you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior. I think it actually, in my opinion, and I've been in higher ed for 38 years, comes too late in the process. It should start the minute you enter college. What do a transcript and a job description have in common? Well, they're both lists. But where do they differ? A transcript is a list of courses and subjects designed by the university and its curriculum committees. The job posting is a list of skills, professional, interpersonal, and technological. Now, we give a huge amount of credence to the transcript, but in today's world of virtual AI job search engines, a transcript does not translate nor does it match as skills. At LinkedIn, we have data that college students underreport the skills and knowledge they have gained in school, believing the transcript says it all. But this transcript is just really a ticket into the job interview. And then on top of that, you need to show evidence of all the skills the employer desires for that position. After fighting hard to get a budget, the employer tries to write a perfect job description for the perfect candidate, knowing that person doesn't even exist. And in most cases, they would be happy with a person who meets 60 to 70% of the qualifications. Once they have done this initial screening, they set up interviews which focus on a good fit for the team, the company culture. They're looking for agreement that this would be a fun person to work with 40 to 60 hours per week. So the big takeaway here today is the search engine can't see or match skills from a transcript. So I want to get in a deeper dive now with Samantha and Arya. Samantha, tell us a little bit about what you're doing at NAU and what's happening to you, like you're graduating almost instantly.
Yeah, so I'm actually graduating in about 2.5 weeks now. I'll be starting my full-time job position as a field engineer in January. And then I'm just going through my capstone, going through my last couple classes.
So how did that job offer come about with you being in school right now?
So the vice president and assistant vice president of the company came to my school last year to do the resume and career workshops that we have here at NAU. And the day before, they actually came in early to meet with students and to kind of see what it was about. They are a construction engineering company, so they were looking for construction management students, but they were from my hometown, so I figured it would be cool to go and see them and meet them and just see what they were about. And then so I ended up talking with them for about 3 to 4 hours with 2 other students. Yeah, it was a long night with a lot of pizza. And they said, you know what, why don't you come back tomorrow to the actual event that your school is hosting? Hand us your resume and we'll see what we can do for you. And then after that, I got an internship. They offered it to me over the phone. Did that over the summer of 2020. At the end of the summer, out of, I believe, 20 interns, 3, maybe 4 of us got offered full-time positions with them.
See, that's just great that there are actions that you can take and those connections matter, and you don't know how the stories, you cannot tell the end of the story yet. So Arya, you're focused on a different area of engineering. Tell us about your school that's unique, that it's just for women, and what kind of areas you're interested in focusing on.
Yes, so currently I am in my 7th semester of mechanical engineering, and I am very much interested in pursuing a career in biomedical engineering. So I was introduced to this field by one of my professors in my last semester, where I also worked on a seminar with him on a topic called as electroactive polymers and cell stimulation. So it was there when I really started liking the field, because I did a lot of research work and read a lot of literature there. So I think that really aided me to come to the conclusion that I would really enjoy doing research and work in this field.
So that's just to show you, I have excellent people that I worked with. So the first thing that we did is, before we even met for our first time, I had them each give me job postings. And I took those job postings and highlighted anything that I thought would be a skill that we would consider a skill at LinkedIn. We have a database of over 50,000 skills that when you go to the skills section of your LinkedIn profile, they pop right up. Look at, they're nodding their heads because they've been through this. And then I sat down with them, and after I did the job description with them, I said, I took all that data, because, I work at LinkedIn, and I put it into what I call a skills analysis. I just looked at what skills, before I even looked at their profiles, I said, these are the skills that I think, and I put them into 3 buckets. Because if you look at our LinkedIn profile, it generally puts things into professional or subject matter expertise, interpersonal skills or communication skills, and then the technology skills and software skills that you need. And then I looked at areas that they needed to update and do on their profile, which were either missing or just completely, they didn't know how to access them. Because a lot of this became clear to me is they didn't know how to add profile sections to their LinkedIn profile. This is the one for Aria. And as you can see now, I have a list of about 30 skills. And when we go to see her, when we go to see each of their befores, you'll see that. So Samantha, you had worked a little bit on your LinkedIn profile before you met me, correct?
Yeah, we had to do it for a school assignment.
So hers was in sort of, if I were going to give it a LinkedIn grade, it was sort of a B minus, right? It was good enough, but not great. And as you can see, even with her having worked on it a little bit ahead of time, I gave her 10 areas to fix in that meeting. You know, as you notice, she's got a generic background. Her about doesn't really tell a story that's compelling or makes me know anything about her. She was missing sections. She had ability to add featured, which is you can add images, web links, posts, articles, all kinds of things that would attract attention. And she had done none of those. But wait till you see Aria's. I think Aria, tell me, did you work on yours maybe a couple hours before you met me the first time?
Yes, that's right. In fact, I was completely new to it and I had not discovered it at all. So it was just a basic profile and there was nothing in it.
She had set it up, period. So what you'll see with hers is that she's got even less on hers. She only has a title, about, and education. And what she didn't really realize is that if she wanted to add more, all she had to do is click on the add profile section. And that was sort of the key to the kingdom here. If you really wanted to be able to find things that you could relate to and find skills and experiences that you could add, it was all going to be in that add profile section. And as we worked on it, the coolest thing happened. In our first session, when we started, she had a rating. You get a rating on your profile. It was a mediocre rating. By mediocre, I mean below half. And while we worked on it, she went to all-star. Cha-ching, cha-ching.
Exactly.
Just while we worked on it in 45 minutes, which is pretty amazing. I thought that was like, it just happened right in front of us. So how do you get noticed? You get noticed by having a fully vetted, fully performing LinkedIn profile. And our goal here is to help people discover the skills they need through a personalized, data-driven learning experience. Keep in mind the chances of you actually meeting people face-to-face and having that experience that Samantha had only comes pre-COVID. She had that experience of being recruited before the COVID crisis. So Aria's in the position of knowing that everything she's going to do is going to be virtual, probably not in a face-to-face space. So here's the after of Aria. And Aria, why don't you tell us what you learned about yourself and about updating your LinkedIn profile, or any advice you'd give to other people?
Right. So I think the primary thing that I learned here is that your skills are very important, and that is something that highlights your profile a lot. So make sure that you have put in all your skills. Like, for example, whenever I used to ask Laurie whether I should put this up here or I should do this, she always associated it with a skill. And she said, yes, it'll show your compliance. It'll show that show your perseverance. It will show that, for example, a volunteering job would show that you're very generous and you want to give back to the society. So a lot of these things got to my mind, and I realized that skills are going to be very important whenever I appear for an interview. Also, another thing is that you become more self-aware. Like I was really not at all aware that I've done so many things, but now that I look at my profile, I feel like, whoa, that's that's really good. So it was like a confidence booster for me. And so yeah, these are the two things that I really enjoy.
Yeah, it's kind of taking your college vocabulary and translating into another language, which is the professional language of hiring, and which is all about skills. So you can see it now. You saw her worksheet that I created for her, and you can see she has a robust set of skills that exactly match what was in those 3 job descriptions that she sent forward to me. She's also even told me, even in this past week, because we've only been working a week on this, that she's been already, since she's updated her profile, LinkedIn has started to send her a few job offers. Now, you told me they're not exactly the right ones, but that's how that works. Once you set up a viable profile, LinkedIn will start sending things that match the skills and experiences that you have listed. And as you say yes and no to those experiences, the AI algorithms get to know you better and you get better generated job choices. I'm now going to show Samantha's. Look at how much better they are. Did you notice now that they've added all these media and pictures, and they're really showing off without over bragging about what they do? Look at the background images that they've both put up there. Look at the fact that as you look at it, it's not just a bunch of text. We know that the human brain is wired to look at images first, headline second, and body text third. You're more likely, 2 times more likely, to have someone stay on your profile if you add imagery and videos and web links to it. And as you can see, she already has a job offer. But as I said to her, we're still working on you, even though you already have a job offer, because Lyle is going to be wanting you to represent its company. And you're going to, this is your first job. It's not your last job. We want to start already thinking about how we can represent Lyle, how we can represent Samantha as having something unique, different than everybody else in the universe. She's not just a Lyle person, and that she's setting herself up for that next job, that next position, that next level up. So what I was really impressed with, what I really pushed on her was, can you in a week get 3 recommendations? And she did. So tell us a little bit how you got those recommendations.
I did exactly as you suggested. It was definitely a little scary for me to message my professor at first, is what I did. He's my advisor for ASME. He was my professor for a couple classes, and he was also my client for my capstone project that I'm doing right now. So when I messaged him, I was hoping we were on good terms, just going to be like, okay, I hope everything's going well. Hope you still like me. Can you write me a 2 to 3, maybe 4 sentence recommendation letter? And then I was also hoping that he would know how to do that on LinkedIn, just because I didn't even know you could ask for recommendations. And then so I asked one from you because you are my mentor, and I was super excited to get something as great as that on there. And then my third one, actually, Lori had asked me to get one from the person that I had directly reported to in my internship. Unfortunately, no one that worked in the same office as me had a LinkedIn profile that was active. So it was a little hard for me to find this. I did end up going to the assistant vice president of the company, which is also an NAU alumni. So that was a great connection that we had. And he's also the one that offered me the job in the first place. So luckily he was able to give me a very long and comprehensive recommendation that it was amazing to see that he actually paid attention and that he talked to everybody. I think this is something great to have on your LinkedIn profile, just because it's going to stay there and it's on there and you can see it whenever anybody looks at your profile.
Right. And even if you don't stay in touch with Grant, or Grant goes on to a different company, or you go on to a different company, you have now a record of this connection. And you also are starting to have a lifelong network of professionals, which Jay can get into more. I mean, you're establishing yourself as someone who's not just a student anymore, but a colleague. And that's super, super important. So I was so impressed that you did that and you got out of your fear zone and just clicked on the button and did it. So now we're getting to the part about networking. This is where, after skills, I thought, didn't you feel, Sam and Samantha and Arya, that after skills, where you were really weak was in the networking area? And we're really lucky today to have Jake Hirsch-Allen with us, who's really great at it. Before I turn it over to Jake, there are a few things that you can do just right while you're in the profile. You know, careers are like jungle gym, not a ladder. The reason I like this picture is it is a network. It's a network of wires. It's a network of connections. And it's really important that that's what you're building, is you're building your jungle gym. It's way more like a Jackson Pollock painting than it is a one-way street where you go college, job, live happily ever after. It's way more that. So just remember it. And as we say at LinkedIn all the time, and we really do say this, it's corny, 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 we're in it together. It's only as good as the people that we're connected with, who support us and raise us up. And if we can do that for others through, as Arya mentioned, generosity and sharing, then it's going to happen and come back to us as well. There are a number of outward bound actions that you can take. One of the things that Arya did is Arya instantly clicked on, I'd like to get started looking for jobs, even though she has one more semester of school. So she clicked on that. And what happened to your little profile picture as soon as we did that, Arya?
It's got that green colored belt which shows open to work, and I was really happy that soon job offers had started coming in.
Yeah, so that's a feature that a lot of people don't turn on. Another unused feature on LinkedIn profiles is say, I'm ready. And you can say you're ready before you graduate. You don't have to wait till the day of graduation to do this. Jobs actually take 3 or 4 months to get, and you go through a lot of interviews. Just for my job at LinkedIn, I was saying to Samantha and Arya, I originally met the CEO, then I met the founder, and then they had me come in for 3 days of meetings to make sure that I would get along with every team member I possibly might meet. That is really the way. You'll probably have 3 sets of interviews. The other thing is people couldn't find that recommendation. I think I'm going to have to go back to LinkedIn on this one. It is under something called additional information, which is not easy to find. So if you want to find how to ask for a recommendation, you have to go to additional information. It has to be a connection. And so one of the things that I'm noticing with students is it's actually making my students go make connections so they can go ask for recommendations. And that's a 2-step process there. And then finally, there's posts. Just make posts. Samantha and Arya, tell us a little bit about the posts that I made them both make a bunch of posts this week. What did you do for posts?
So I think the day we met was the first day when I made a post on LinkedIn. And as soon as I ended the Zoom call, I already had a notification that 13 people viewed your profile. And I was like, whoa, so this is so effective and it's very rapid. So I think you should make a post, and I intend to do that at least thrice every month.
Right. And Samantha, you same thing. And what I noticed within the stats is that both of you, I just looked at them a couple of days ago, yesterday, as a matter of fact, they were up to like 54, 48 views and likes and wahoos and yays and all that stuff. So that's super cool. In 7 days, went from 4 and 6 to 54. Pretty amazing. This is something also underused. You can create a badge that says you're open to work, and you can also set your visibility. I noticed that a lot of students I coach have their visibility set to private, and you need to make it public if you're looking for a job. So this is a really important part. And to edit your custom URL so it's as easy for people as possible to get to. So just remember, just a few more stats, and then I'm turning it over to Jake. If you apply within 20 minutes of a job notification, you are 4 times more likely to hear back, 9% more likely to get hired if you add a LinkedIn Learning certificate or any certification or badges up on your profile. And you're 4 times more likely to get a job at a company where you have prior connections. Samantha's our great example today of that. Her connections ended up bringing her all the way through the job process without it being a terrible and painful process. So Jake, you're really the best networker I know on the planet. I'm going to give you that big of a send-off. What advice do you have for Samantha and Arya? And Arya and Samantha, is there anything you want to ask Jake? Because he really is our resident expert at LinkedIn.
So maybe I'll jump in with a quick intro and then I'll pass it over to Arya if that works for you, Arya. But thank you, Lori, for the compliment. It's definitely not entirely deserved, in the sense that I think Lori actually takes that cake and is just being modest. And moreover, I'm sure there are far better networkers out there. But within my small, perspective on the world, the reason that everybody laughed when I joined LinkedIn was that everybody for a decade before that had joked that I was Jaked in, that I sort of was born networking. And as a little kid, my dad was a diplomat. I literally used to sort of run around dinner parties trying to shake everybody's hand. So it came pretty naturally to me. In fact, just last night, my current role is running higher education and workforce development systems for LinkedIn Learning across North America. And the conversation I was having with my partner as I'm taking a bit of a time off right now, just a few days, was what is sort of the macro purpose that unites the many different roles I've had. My career is, like Lori pointed out, a jungle gym rather than a linear track. It's consisted of everything from international criminal law to intellectual property law, from being an entrepreneur and starting Canada's largest software development boot camp to being a professor. And then of course, the past almost 6 years now at LinkedIn. But what unites those is networking. To be totally frank, it's the value that I am able to create, the social impact, the benefits for other people's lives that I'm able to create by connecting people and ideas. And so with that as background, I thought this was the perfect subject for a conversation. So Arya, how can I help in terms of networking tips?
Yes, so I wanted to know about the messages which you send before sending a request for connection. So is there any specific thing that you want us to mention in a message while we are sending it to a person we've met only once, maybe probably twice? And are there any things that we need to mention in that message?
It's a great question. And I think it's actually a question that opens up a larger question about how to use social media more generally. So maybe I'll answer the specific one about how to use an in-mail or a connection request on LinkedIn. And one thing actually, Arya, that you pointed out there and that I think Lori pointed out as well is when you make the connection request, make sure that you explain that you customize the request, which actually takes a couple extra clicks on mobile. It pops up right away on your desktop app, but always make sure that you're customizing that request for a connection to explain why you're making it, exactly what your question pointed out. And that's actually true for everybody who's listening to us right now as well. Feel free to add, I'm sure Lori's okay with it as well, but feel free to add me, I should speak for myself, on LinkedIn. But when you do so, explain in the customized connection request, thanks Lori, why you're doing so. Just explain that you were at the ASME conference, you saw me, and therefore you'd like to add me on your network in order to, and then fill in the in order to, because later in life, you think we might be able to provide each other mutual benefit in the areas of X and Y. So slightly more broadly, instead of just a connection request, if we think of any email, even to somebody who you know well, but usually to people who you don't know as well, and every time to somebody who you've never met, you want to explain why it is that you're contacting them, right? So you start with, hi, this is who I am. Then you continue with, this is why I'm in touch. And ideally, sometimes this is too much for a connection request, but certainly in an email, you would explain the value that you're providing them and ideally the value that they could provide you. And the softer touch that these messages are, the stronger they'll be, i.e., I almost never want, even if the person is perfect for a job, I don't want somebody coming up to me and starting the conversation with, hi, can I have a job? Instead, I want, hi, this is my name. This is why I'm talking to you. And then eventually, if we get to, and I'd love to inquire about a job offer with your company, all the better. But it's that soft touch, which really is created by explaining the mutual benefit and often is established by just showing your curiosity. If you can show that you're interested in the other person, in what the other person's doing, then you're going to be a lot better at showing what is possible in terms of your relationship and making them not feel pressured into accepting. And then the last point, I know this is a very long answer, but the last point I wanted to make about social media more broadly is that think about how you act on LinkedIn as simply an analogy to how you act in the real world. I think many of the problems associated with social media come from us interacting on the platform as different from how we would want to be treated in person. You know, there's that classic maxim that treat others as you'd want to be treated. Do the same thing online, but then think about it actually in terms of how you'd want to be treated in person, not online. So sorry for the long answer, but great question.
Got it. Thank you.
Of course. Sam?
What about you, Samantha?
So mine's not really social media or LinkedIn specified. It's more of when you're in a large group of people. So pre-COVID, we would have been at career fairs or something, and you go up to the table and there's so many people there surrounding the representatives of that company. How do you go up to them? But now you're in a Zoom call, and I feel like for some people that's more intimidating because it's electronically, you don't really know how these people are going to react. You don't have that human connection where you can just make eye contact and be like, hey, I want to talk to you, you know? How do you make that first initial, I can't think of the word right now, but that first initial contact. Yeah, contact with them when you're in a large setting as such of a session just like this?
It's a great question. And honestly, I've been doing this my whole life and I still feel the imposter complex, right? I was saying as a child, I networked, and yet the imposter complex is when you don't feel like you're capable of doing something. The classic example for me is teaching, because I used to teach regularly, and every single time I started teaching, I'd get in front of the class and I would feel like, oh man, I don't have the skills or the knowledge or the experience to do this, even though I probably did. And in part, I think what you're describing in the hesitation to reach out to somebody online in parallel to the hesitation to reach out to them at a cocktail party is specifically that you don't feel like you're appropriate for that role or you're not appropriate for that interaction. And I think it's a natural human tendency that's really a healthy one, right? It makes us work harder to be better, to do better. But at the same time, you have to counter it. And I think, as your question would suggest, we have to counter it even more strongly online, i.e., there's going to be 10 times as many people reaching out to that person online because of how easy it is. Therefore, you have to hesitate less, i.e., you have to do it more, and you have to do it ideally in a better way. And when I say better here, I actually usually mean more human and more appealing to the person that you're connecting to. So again, if you start with, I want a job, they're probably going to be turned off. If you start with, I'm interested in what you work on in this way, or let's pick an engineering subject, right? Like, let's see if you can actually come up with one. From the firm that you have applied and successfully gotten a job at, if there was something that interested you about that firm, what's an example? What kind of work do they do that's cool?
I mean, I think it's the difference that they're making, the upgrades for the membrane bioreactor systems that they're doing.
Cool. So like, I have no idea what that means, but I'm assuming the people who are running that business know exactly what that means. I'm assuming more people on this call probably know what it means because there's more engineers as well, not lawyers. But also the fact that you're pointing out, something that's specific about what they do will immediately get them engaged in a manner that so many of the other applicants would not have been able to do. And so that actually raises one last point, which I think is probably the most important one, which is do your research. Make it really easy for them to respond. And here, maybe I'll feed into a tip that I added on this conference last year, which is when you're sending a request for somebody, maybe that you just chatted with about an opportunity at another organization or with another group within their company, when you send them that message, make it really easy for them to then introduce you to somebody else. All of the interactions should be as easy as possible. And so an example of how to make that easy is you can literally just write it for them. When you send them the message, you say, look, I'm interested in talking to you for this reason. This is who I am. This is why you want to talk to me. And I'd love an introduction to X person that you mentioned the last time we talked. Here's the introduction. I've drafted it for you. If you don't want to send it, no problem. And if you don't want to send it, but there's something else you can tell me about them, great. If not, again, no problem. So you're making it super, super easy for them to either help you or not. And the same is actually true in terms of interviews. So for instance, at the start of this conversation, you and I and Lori and Arya were having a chat. Often, if I want to make that chat really engaging ahead of time, I will already have brainstormed the questions that I want to ask the person to make sure that when we're talking, they don't have to think about what we have to talk about. So whenever I'm having a coffee chat with somebody and I'm trying to get something out of that coffee chat, I just ensure ahead of time that I have enough questions, enough things to talk about that I think they will be interested in, that the conversation's really easy. And I think that is sort of the overarching recommendation. Make these interactions as easy and positive and interesting for the other party as possible, and you will be the one whose message they respond to.
So those were some really good tips. Well, the first one is make it personal and make it specific, like Samantha did. And then the third one is connect without asking for a job, connect to gain information, and do the research before you do make that connection. So you have something to talk about. And I assume, Jake, that since you can't do your face-to-face coffee chats, you're doing more Zoom chats. I mean, are you doing things like, what's a
Zoom
typical
phone call? Often you want to make it again.
How long?
Good question. So you want to ask for, I'd say, at least 20 minutes. You probably can't get into what you want and sort of what your personality is like and why you're impressive in less than 20 minutes. Often you don't want to ask for an hour up front because I think that can be an imposition, but if they want to give you an hour, all the better. And the idea that you can have that conversation in a manner that will allow you to demonstrate the skills that Lori was pointing out earlier is really, really important. So when you're thinking about what questions to ask or what subjects you want to talk about, try to ensure that you're able to explain or demonstrate your expertise, ideally show instead of tell your expertise in that conversation. And one thing that Lori just did that I'm really bad at is distill the essence of a question down to the points that are actually important to carry through. Often I will get lost in sort of the complexity, and being able to be really clear at the end about honestly what you want out of the conversation is really important as well.
So I feel like, Anand, you have gotten some of the best, coolest tips. And Samantha and Arya, I'm so proud of you and what you've done. And your confidence is like 3 times what it was when I first met you. I feel like you've got a vocabulary. I feel like you have the poise. I feel like you know more what you want, and you have a better idea of what employers want. And you can use that to tell these personal stories, to make it a storytelling experience. So Anand, let's open it up, and we can do a Q&A. And while we're doing the Q&A, I've wanted you to know that I made a LinkedIn learning path. I'm a curator now, and it covers all of the things that we talked about, including the last few things that courses that we have available right now in the library.
Great, thanks, Lori. So our first question is from Joan, and Joan's question is, I've noticed that many entry-level job openings on LinkedIn ask for multiple years of experience with skill, software, and knowledge application. Does coursework count as experience? If not, how would you go about building experience in your post-college career? So Lori, I'll toss that to you to maybe start.
Well, Samantha and Arya both know. What did I say? If you don't have a lot of work experience, what do you add? They know the answer.
Skills.
You had volunteer or internships.
That too.
Volunteer experience is recruiters now equate volunteer experience to being the same as real life work experience. And as Arya pointed out, it shows that, one, you're generous, that you're committed to the community and the society that you live in to make it better, and that your services matter, that your skills you have, you can translate into different problem solving scenarios. So recruiters think all 3 of those things are super important. I want to hire people that give back to each other in the company. I want people who think forward about the future. I'm not hiring you just for today, but for a year from now, 3 years from now. And the fact that you try to make everybody rise with you, and that things matter. Purpose matters. Meaning matters.
Maybe I'll add one really quick thing, Anand, if that's okay. And that is because I mean, Lori honestly nailed all the essentials. The broader picture here, again, is what Samantha was pointing out, which is that you want to narrow down to the skills and experience that you're bringing. What is it that you're bringing? Because quite frequently, when an employer is listing a number of years of experience, they're just trying to distill as simply and sort of universally understandably as possible a type of person that they want in a role. And if you can convince them that you're that kind of person, but your experience has instead, as Lori pointed out, been in volunteering, or one of my favorite examples is for newcomers. Think about a refugee who's been traveling for 5 years. They probably don't have a concrete resume filling out what they've been doing for those 5 years, but they've been learning a ton of skills. Imagine they had a family of 5 that they shepherded across a few different borders. They've learned project management. They've learned communication. They've probably learned some languages. They've definitely learned resilience. And being able to draft those and then capture them on a LinkedIn profile is as important as any job.
Great, thanks, Jake. Jake, I'm actually going to toss this next question to you to start with. One of our students has asked and said, I've got a ton of connections, over 1,600 connections, but I only really know about 300 of them. Is this a good thing, or does it show a lack of authenticity?
Well, for one thing, I don't think anybody else will know, so you will just keep that secret to yourself for now. The other thing is, honestly, on LinkedIn, it's up to you. Just like in real life, it's up to you how dense you want your network to be. My partner, for instance, is a much more introverted person than I am. Clearly, I'm an extrovert, and she likes to just have her LinkedIn connections, just like she likes her Rolodex or contact list in her phone book, to actually be people she knows and interacts with regularly. I, on the other hand, am the exact opposite. I just offered that you all could connect with me, and that offer stands. But I will ensure in my head and sort of in LinkedIn that you are categorized in essence amongst those who are looser contacts, people that I don't know as well. But for instance, if, let's say in a couple of years, Samantha and Arya are working at companies that other friends want introductions to, I would feel fine sending them a message on LinkedIn saying, hi, you might remember we met at the ASME conference. this person wants to look at a job at your organization. Would you be willing to have a chat with them? So again, it's really up to you how broad you want that network to be.
When LinkedIn first purchased lynda.com, I had 300 connections. I was much more like Jake's partner. I kept it close and tight. They were all people I knew. And I was asked in this role to be more of a thought leader and more of an evangelist, and to post how what we were doing in LinkedIn Learning really mattered to the education community. So once given that focus, and that's what I kept saying to Arya and Samantha, focus on the kinds of posts that you'll be good at doing. I now have about 3,500 organically achieved in the last 5 or 6 years. Not because I too, when I speak, always say you're welcome to connect to me. But the other thing that happens that with both Jake and myself is, we're both now more mid to senior career people. And so when I get sent jobs opportunities all the time, and I share those. So I say to Samantha and Arya, I share any job that I get offered right now, because we're doing COVID, and I always write in my post job opportunity, and I put the job title up there. And those actually are my top viewed posts in the last 2 or 3 months. So I am basically being what I call a free agent recruiter for people. I polled my students at Pasadena City College. 60% of them got their first job on LinkedIn. I shouldn't say this in front of LinkedIn, without being a premium member, through the community of people sharing posts, not through paid recruits and not through paid job advertisement.
Great, thanks, Lori. So we have another question which speaks to a little bit of what you were presenting earlier today. And the question is around, how should a LinkedIn profile be designed? Should it target a particular job or a general level? Or should it be much more generic and cater to many different types of jobs? Lori, I'll start with you there.
Yeah, go ahead, Lori.
Jake, go ahead.
Okay, I'll jump in, and then Lori, I'm sure you'll have more to say. Really briefly, I think, again, the profile should resemble who you want to be perceived as by employers. And if you're applying to lots of different kinds of jobs, then you probably need a slightly broader profile. If you want a job in mechanical engineering like Samantha, then you probably can be much more specific, or electrical engineering. But generally speaking, I would, again, try to make sure the profile reflects who you think employers want to see in the job that they are posting an ad for. Over to you, Lori.
Which is why I give the exercises. Look for 3 jobs you'd love to get aspirationally. Don't worry whether you get those jobs. That's what I did with Arya, knowing that she didn't know what her career. And she came up with 3 jobs that were aspirational. And we saw that amongst all 3 of them, it said mechanical engineering, research emphasis. Okay, so we'll put, that's her umbrella. That's her big umbrella. And there were literally thousands of jobs under that umbrella. We didn't narrow her job search down to 2. I'm also teaching a graduate course, and my students have been putting down designer. And I said, let's go find the 3 jobs you'd like to get. And somebody goes, I came back, and you know what? 7 for All Mankind has a job called lifestyle product designer. And I read the description, and it's me. And I said, now you know what to put for your headline, lifestyle product designer, because she cares about sustainable materials. She wants products that enhance people's lives and make them feel part of the community that they originally lived in. She hadn't thought about it because she didn't go out and see what people were looking for. So I always say, we have the world's largest professional network, and we have a lot of job descriptions out there that you can go find, and you're looking for a job description that matches you, and people are going to come, but don't be too specific, because, for instance, in the entertainment industry, there are, in the tech industry, like Linda Wyman made up my job. There's no other job that says education innovation advisor. I mean, but in my about me, I'm pretty clear about the who I am, what I do for LinkedIn Learning, and how I hope it helps the world. So it's the who, what, why that really matters in that story. You've got 2 chances there, but in the job description, make it an umbrella job that there could be a number of pathways for you.
Great, thanks so much, Lori. I'm just going to do one more question as we're almost out of time. And Jake, I'm going to give this question over to you. And it's kind of an aggregation of many questions that are coming in. And the questions are around the theme of, individuals not having employment due to COVID, and how can they position their profile in the best possible light to attract recruiters and potential job opportunities?
It's a great question, and there is this constant question of whether you should be in a job or in a role in advance of applying for a job because it'll look better. And these days there are so many people who are out of work that it honestly looks more like the Depression than any time when those of us were alive. And I think that actually should bring us together. Like, now is the time for us to have hope in the fact that we will all eventually find jobs. We will all eventually rebound. It may take longer for some than others. It may take, until economies as a whole pick back up, but there will be a time when everybody who's involved in this conference will be gainfully employed, in part just because you already have the motivation to be listening to these talks, to be participating in this process. That motivation is what's going to get you through it. And so practically speaking, what I would do is apply as if you weren't in one of the worst job markets in history. Apply as if you were the perfect candidate. Try to take that motivation of being in a community of like-minded people, all of whom are striving for jobs that are just as interesting as they were before the pandemic, or just as interesting as they are to you now in school, and funnel that energy into a process wherein you're able to show your full self and your interests and your aspirations, with sort of a lot of the darkness that surrounds our time in the background, but not necessarily preventing you from accessing those hopes, because practically speaking, you all will get a job. It's just about getting over the lack of, in some cases, self-confidence that I was describing earlier when I talked about the imposter complex, and believing in yourself.
Great, thanks so much.
I would like to add just want to add one thing, because I've always been a designer or an artist, and I've always had 3 to 5 jobs since I was 21. I'm 68. Guess what? I have 3 jobs. I'm teaching 2 college courses, and I work full time at LinkedIn Learning. So I'm just putting it out there that sometimes some of my worst jobs have been the really restrictive 40 to 60-hour week job, i.e. working for the evil entertainment industry. And I couldn't do anything else, and I had no freedom and never could have any time off on a project. And my ability to have 3 jobs where I feel purposeful and that it actually is doing something important is really good for me. Now, it took me a long time to get used to the idea, and my mother hated it. My mother said, when are you going to have a job? I can just tell my friends you have a job. But I've been able to put together a life that is financially supportive of my lifestyle, raise 2 children as a single mom, and do that with a multiple of jobs. So I don't, one of the things I've noticed on LinkedIn is that they're putting contract, part-time, and remote work are bumping those choices up. It used to be it was part-time, full-time. Those were your only 2 choices on LinkedIn. There's now like 6 different choices of the kinds of work. So I'm telling you to be open to the idea that it isn't necessarily a 40-hour week job, that we can actually collage together our careers to make them the things that we want to be doing. And there are plenty of local companies and jobs and restaurant people and community small businesses that need our help, that we could probably offer services and get part-time contract work while we're waiting or looking for that super job that we all hope's out there.
Great. Lori, Jake, I just want to thank you both so much for all your words of wisdom for this incredible session. And Samantha and Arya, thank you so much for participating in this process, for updating your LinkedIn profiles. They look absolutely amazing. And thank you so much for joining us today in this LinkedIn session. Have a great day, everyone.